Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I was on the floor counting gifts when it hit. One box, then two, then three, then a hole that shouldn't exist. The present for his mother was gone, just a blank gap. My name is Emma and I'm 26 and suddenly sweating. I knew I put it right there last night and that certainty scared me. I checked behind the tree and under the low table again. Nothing. Not even the crumpled tissue I remembered tossing aside. My chest buzzed in that way it does before an argument. I told myself to relax before I created one out of nothing. I opened the closet and checked the shelf where I kept the receipt. The paper was there with the small necklace circled in ink. My stomach twisted because that meant the problem was not memory. The problem was that the gift existed yesterday and did not now. Jake was in the bedroom getting ready and humming off-key. I watched the doorway hoping the present would somehow just be there again. The longer I stared, the more obvious the answer became. I hated that my first thought was him and not a mistake. "Where is the bag for your mom?" The words came out sharper than planned. He stuck his head around the corner with one hand in his hair. His eyebrows pulled together like I had just accused him of something awful. Maybe because I had. "What bag?" He leaned against the doorframe and pretended to think. I could tell from the little smirk starting that he already knew. That look always showed up before he tried to spin something. It felt like watching a coin hang in the air forever. The gift for her, the necklace I wrapped yesterday for Christmas. My throat felt tight as the words came out. My voice pitched up with every syllable and I hated it. I sounded less like a partner and more like a teacher catching a kid. He caught that and rolled his eyes like I was overreacting again. "Oh, that." His fingers snapped like he had just solved a puzzle. "Yeah, I grabbed it last night while you were brushing your teeth." He turned back to the mirror and straightened his shirt like we were talking about groceries. I froze on that one tiny word he dropped so easily. "For what?" The question came out slower than I intended. I already knew the answer, yet my mind still wanted to hear it. He shrugged in the mirror and kept fussing with his hair. "For her, obviously, what else would it be for?" The air between us thickened in a way I instantly recognized. I stepped into the doorway so he had to look at me. "You mean the present I bought and wrapped and hid under the tree?" My hands were shaking now and I tried to keep them behind me. I did not want to give him the satisfaction of seeing that. Jake finally turned and leaned on the frame like this was nothing serious. "Babe, we share everything." His hands lifted in an easy shrug that made my skin crawl. "It is from us, okay?" He acted like he was explaining basic math to a child. "This is where I wish I could tell you." I walked away. Instead, I stood there counting all the reasons I should not make a scene. We were supposed to leave for his parents' house in an hour. I did not want to start Christmas morning with a screaming match. So I swallowed hard and tried to sound reasonable even though nothing felt reasonable. "Fine, but you are telling her we picked it together." The words scraped my throat on the way out. I hated how small that request sounded even as I made it. I was not even asking him to change the plan just to name me. That should have been the easiest promise in the world. He nodded fast like he wanted the conversation finished more than anything. "Sure, whatever, we both did it." The way he said it felt like tossing scraps to a dog. It landed somewhere between agreement and dismissal, and I grabbed onto it anyway. I told myself it was enough for now because I needed it to be. Later that morning, I pretended to fuss with my bag. From the corner of my eye, I saw him walk to the tree. He crouched and picked up the gift like it had always been his. The move was smooth and almost practiced, and that bothered me more than I admitted. He brushed off a stray ribbon and smiled at his reflection in the dark screen. I opened my mouth to remind him about mentioning me and then closed it. We were already running late and my nerves buzzed like exposed wires. If I pushed again, he would call me dramatic and the whole morning would spiral. So I smiled when he looked over and pretended everything felt good. That fake smile is the one I remember most from that entire holiday. Looking back now, I can see how tiny the request was. I was not asking for diamonds or some grand gesture. I just wanted my name attached to something I had done with care. That morning showed me exactly how little space my effort took in his mind. I should have paid more attention to that emptiness under the tree. Jake balanced the gift box on his knees the entire drive. Every bump made the bag rustle like it was mocking me. I what? He d his fingers tap against it while he hummed nonsense. The whole time I rehearsed one simple line in my head. Remember to mention we chose it together, that was the line. I almost spoke the words out loud just to lock them in. Instead, I bit my tongue and stared out the window like a coward. If I reminded him again, he would call me intense and ruin everything early. By the time we pulled up, my palms were damp on my jeans. He jumped out first, holding that bag like a trophy under his arm. His parents' front door flew open before we even hit the steps. They shouted his name and reached for him and for the gift. I trailed behind carrying our overnight bag while he crossed the threshold like a star. His mom wrapped her arms around him before he even set the present down. I caught a quick squeeze and a distracted hello over his shoulder and tried to ignore the sting. The bag was already halfway to their tree before anyone looked at me properly. Jake set it in the prime spot right near the front and adjusted the tag. He turned back with that casual grin and clapped his hands once. There we go, crisis officially dodged. I kept my arms folded while his mom fussed over how thoughtful he always was. We migrated to the living room and everyone settled while I hovered at the edge. His sister dropped onto the armrest near me and handed over a mug without asking. You look tense, she murmured with one eyebrow arched. Just nerves, I lied, watching that single bag like it might explode. When it was time for presents, his mom went straight for the one he had placed. My heart climbed into my throat so fast I thought I would choke. She glanced at him with that proud smile she always reserves for her favorite stories. Okay, what did you do this year? He leaned forward on his knees and rested his elbows like this was a performance. I caught his eye and gave the tiniest nod as a reminder. He glanced past me and never mentioned my involvement once. I found this and thought of you immediately. She tore the paper and lifted the box lid with both hands shaking. When she opened it, her mouth dropped and she actually gasped his name. Oh my God, you remembered what I liked. She launched herself at him and wrapped him in a full-body hug while I stayed planted on the rug. Thank you, she repeated into his shoulder over and over like it was a prayer. Eventually, she turned to me and squeezed my hand as an afterthought. You two always make such a great team. I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt and held back words that tasted like metal. His sister watched the whole thing with that sharp look siblings get when they sense a pattern. She nudged my arm once the room focused on other boxes and whispered close to my ear. He really just skipped your name, huh? I laughed under my breath and pretended it did not matter while something heavy settled behind my ribs. Around the table, his mom could not stop bringing up how thoughtful he was that day. Every time she mentioned it, I opened my mouth, then forced it shut again. At one point, she asked him how he picked it and leaned in waiting for details. He launched into some improvised story about spotting it on a trip while I stared at my plate until my vision blurred. In that moment, it hit me that I cared less about the jewelry than about disappearing from my own effort. The room stayed loud, but I felt weirdly distant, like I was watching through glass. I told myself to hold it together until we got home, and then maybe I would finally stop pretending this was normal. I did not know it yet, but that dinner would be the last time I let him rewrite us so easily. I yanked the car door harder than necessary and climbed in. The second it shut, I felt the words rush up. You really could not mention me once in there. My voice came out rough, like it had been waiting all day. He adjusted the mirror instead of looking at me. Can we not start already? We just left. The engine turned over while he kept his eyes straight ahead. That calm tone always hit me harder than yelling ever could. I stared at his profile and dug my nails into my palm. You promised you would say it was from both of us. I kept it short because I knew if I rambled he would tune out. My chest felt tight, but my words stayed very clear. He backed out of the driveway a little too fast and shrugged. I did say we, you just did not hear it. That sentence made my brain stutter because I had listened like a hawk. For a second, I honestly questioned my own memory. I turned toward him in the seat so I could see his face. No, you said you saw it and thought of her. You talked about finding it like it was your idea from the start. Do not tell me I imagined that. I am not crazy. He let out a short laugh that did not sound amused. There it is, he muttered the crazy word. One hand left the wheel long enough to gesture between us. You are really going to ruin Christmas over some receipt and a trinket. That choice of woe. RDS hit harder than the fake laugh. A trinket, that was what he called the thing I worked extra hours for. I bit the inside of my cheek so I would not start crying yet. I refused to give him tears while he still enjoyed being righteous. This is not about the price, I told him slowly. It is about you erasing me from the whole thing. You stood there while your mom thanked only you over and over. You watched me and never corrected her once. He tapped the steering wheel like some impatient metronome. You were sulking in the corner the entire time. What, I am supposed to drag you into every sentence? Sorry I did not deliver your acceptance speech. That line almost made me laugh out of shock. An acceptance speech, that was how he spun basic credit. I looked out the window because if I kept staring at him I would scream. The houses blurred while my anger turned into something heavier. You know what bothered me most? I asked after a beat. He exhaled loud enough that it fogged the windshield near his side. Of course there was more, go ahead. He tossed that out like he already knew I would back down. You lied when she asked how you picked it. The words came out softer but they cut deeper. You made up some story about finding it on a trip. You watched me listen while you rewrote the whole thing. He tightened his grip on the wheel until his knuckles went pale. Do you ever get tired of dissecting every sentence I say? I forgot to buy her something, all right, that already sucked. I grabbed what you got because it was right there and it worked. That admission should have felt like progress, but it did not. He still framed it like a practical move instead of stealing. You took it without asking, I reminded him that matters. If I did that with your stuff you would lose it. He snorted and finally glanced over at me. You are not built like me, he whispered, you would never pull that. His mouth curved like he found that somehow charming. All it did was make me feel small in a different way. We hit a red light and the car rolled to a stop. I felt the quiet pressing down on us harder than the seat belts. Just admit you screwed up and I will drop it. I kept my tone flat because begging for respect felt worse. He stared at the traffic signal like it had insulted him. I am not groveling because you misheard a couple phrases. Everyone was happy, no one was hurt except your ego. Why do you always need to turn nothing into a crisis? Something in me snapped at that word. Nothing, that was his favorite label for anything that upset me. My hands started shaking and I shoved them under my thighs. If this is nothing, I asked, then what would something look like? He rolled through the next light a little late and cursed under his breath. You want me to spell it out? He asked with a bitter laugh. Something would be cheating or lying about money or crashing the car. You are seriously ranking this in the same league right now. That framing did what it always did, it made me doubt myself again. No, I am not saying it is as bad as those. I am saying it was cruel in a quiet way. I am asking if you even care that you hurt me. He went silent for a few seconds and the quiet felt sharp. Then he shook his head once and spoke low. You know what, I am tired. Every tiny thing turns into a trial with you as the judge. I felt my face heat like I had been slapped. That was the part that really got me. Trial, judge, dramatic language he only used when he needed a villain. I knew exactly who he had cast in that role. We turned onto our street and the fight shrank with the distance. The closer we got to home, the more embarrassed I felt. I pictured us walking past neighbors with red eyes and tense shoulders. I pictured his version of this story and how believable it would sound. He pulled into our usual spot and killed the ignition without moving. The sudden quiet inside the car rang in my ears. We sat there with our seatbelts still on like two strangers. He finally spoke without looking at me. You know I love you, right? The tone was softer now, worn out, nearly gentle. You know I am just bad at this planning stuff. I did not mean anything by it. That was the first time he used that excuse that night. I heard it and felt something inside tilt but not fall yet. I wanted to believe that love and incompetence were the only pieces. The alternative meant I had chosen someone who enjoyed taking from me. I swallowed hard and stared at the dashboard. If you really did not mean it, you could fix it. Next time she brings it up, tell her I picked it and we wrapped it together. That is all I am asking. He finally turned his head and studied my face. You are still hung up on the credit thing, he muttered. But fine, if it shuts this down, I will mention you. The phrase landed like a door closing in my stomach. He clicked his seat belt off and reached for the handle. You done, he asked, or are we dragging TH? Is upstairs. That line made the choice for me before I could think. I nodded once because I could not trust my voice. Walking up to the apartment, I kept replaying that car ride. Every time I hit a piece where I sounded harsh, I flinched. Every time I reached the parts where he mocked me, I softened it. By the time we unlocked the door, I almost believed his version. Now writing this, I can hear how twisted that sounds. Back then I called it compromise and told myself we both overreacted. I thought staying quiet kept the peace and meant we were strong. Really, I was just training him to see my effort as optional. I dropped our fight into the group thread in one burst. Every line came out harsher on screen than it had in the car. I listed the present and the broken promise, and how he erased me in front of everyone. My thumb hovered over send, while my heart hammered against the inside of my ribs. Then I hit it before I could convince myself I was blowing things up for nothing. The first reply arrived before I even locked my phone. What the hell popped up from Mia with 3 angry emojis that somehow still felt too gentle. Then came wow and nope, and absolutely not from the rest of them in fast little bursts. It felt like watching a jury raise every hand at the same exact moment. For a second I loved them for taking my side so quickly, then shame crawled up my throat. Maybe I overdid it, and I stared at the last screenshot I had sent. In text form, the whole night looked like evidence instead of feelings I could smooth over later. I started to type never mind, forget it, but my fingers would not follow the command. Another message came in before I could erase anything, and it landed dead center in my chest. Is this new for him or just the latest version of the same problem? That question sat on the screen for a long time without any glitter or jokes to soften it. I heard her voice in my head, calm in that way she uses when she stops humoring me. My first instinct was to defend him like always and call it a misstep. Then I almost added that the holiday pressure got to him and made everything weird. I froze over the keyboard because if I wrote that I would have to believe it again. I finally answered with the weakest thing I could come up with. I typed maybe he was just stressed and hit send before I chickened out. 3 dots appeared right away like they had been waiting for that line. Girl, this is not stress, this is disrespect showed up next, and I actually flinched. Another friend wrote I would lose it if my partner used my present like that and smiled about it. My cheeks burned even though I was alone in the bedroom with the door half closed. They were not there, they had not heard the way his voice softened at the end in the car. All they had were my messages, and still they could see something I had been dodging for months. Another bubble appeared. Sorry if this sounds harsh, but it feels like a pattern, not a one-time slip. That word sat with me longer than any insult would have. I thought of the almost forgotten little hurts that piled up quietly behind this one. The times he brushed off my effort with a joke, the times I laughed along to keep things light. I felt my brain rush to defend him again, my stomach rolled at how automatic it was. Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed one more line into the chat. I think I need to clear this up with his mom somehow, and my hand shook as I wrote that. The responses to that came in even faster than before. Bold, one of them wrote with a skull emoji that somehow made me laugh. Another told me to protect myself first because this could backfire if he found out. One message just read, please record everything in your brain for later because this feels important. Important landed heavier than the jokes, and I realized they did not see this as a small argument anymore. I slipped off the bed and crept into the hallway to check where he was. The television was going in the other room, and his laugh floated out at something I could not catch. He sounded relaxed, like the drive home had never happened, which made me feel slightly unhinged. I walked into the kitchen and stared at his mom's name on my screen for 10 full seconds. Then I picked it up again and pressed call before I could think about the fallout. The ringing stretched long enough that I considered hanging up and pretending this was a pocket dial. On the 4th ring, she answered with my name in that bright family tone that still surprised me. Hey there, I tried to keep my voice even while my throat fought me. We traded a few lines about the food and the drive and how tired everyone was. The real reason for the call pressed at the back of my teeth the whole time. Before I could steer the conversation, she went there on her own. Thank you again for coming earlier, you know how much it means to him. Then she started gushing about the necklace in detail and how thoughtful our son was for remembering exactly what she liked. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles hurt and stared at the sink like it might answer for him. He told me he planned it for months, and my stomach dropped straight through the floor. There it was, the clean little lie wrapped around my effort like gift wrap. I heard myself laugh a little, it sounded wrong and shaky. I need to clear something up about that present, and suddenly my mouth felt as dry as paper. There was a pause that stretched just long enough for me to almost bail again. Go on, she murmured, and I could picture her shifting in her chair. I told her I had picked the necklace while he was at work and paid for it myself. I explained that he forgot to get her anything and grabbed mine at the last second without asking. The words came out too fast and too calm at the same time, like I had practiced them alone. I left out the argument in the car and how he brushed off my feelings. Some stubborn, loyal part of me still wanted to shield him from how this sounded. On the other end, I heard nothing for several seconds except a small shift like she had moved the phone. For a second I thought the call had dropped and pulled the device away to check the screen. Then her voice came back thinner than before with a careful little wow that did not sound impressed at all. So you bought it, and he never mentioned that part once. I rested my forehead against the cabinet door and told her yes, I did. Another pause settled between us, and this one stretched longer than the first. When she spoke again, her voice had lost all the bright edges from earlier. Thank you for telling me the truth about this, she whispered, and I heard her swallow hard. Has he ever twisted things like that with you before or left out important pieces when he talks about you too? The question landed huge in my chest because she was not asking as a casual parent anymore. I opened my mouth and nothing came out at first because every example tried to rush through at once. I was not ready to unpack all of that with his mother while he sat 20 feet away watching television. So I chose the smallest truth I could live with and dropped it between us like a pebble. I told her he sometimes leaves my part out of stories because he thinks it sounds cleaner that way. Even as I said it, I knew I was shrinking the damage, trying to keep both of us looking better. She exhaled into the phone and it crackled a little in my ear. Yeah, that sounds about right for him, she murmured very quietly. When he was younger, he brought home group projects and stood there while I praised only him. I used to joke that he collected credit like trophies, and now I feel sick remembering that. Hearing her say that made my skin prickle because this was not a new glitch we could fix with one talk. I rushed in to soften it even though none of this was mine to fix. I told her I did not think he meant to hurt anyone and that he probably panicked and grabbed the easiest option. She let me finish without interrupting, and that silence felt heavier than if she had defended him. Thank you for being honest with me about this, she finally said, and I heard a chair scrape in the background. I am going to talk to him later, and I am sure he will have his own version. We ended the call with stiff little goodbyes, and she told me she was glad she heard my version first. When the line went quiet, I realized my legs were shaking, and I had been standing in the same spot. My phone lit up again with a text from her, thank you for calling earlier, and a small heart emoji. I screenshotted that message for the group and my hands trembled as I sent it to them. Somewhere in the other room his ringtone started and my stomach clenched because I knew exactly who was calling. I stood in the kitchen listening to it ring and told myself this was the moment everything between us tilted. I just did not know yet whether it would fall back into place or shatter completely. Either way, that ringtone sounded like a countdown I could not stop. He grabbed his phone on the second ring and checked the screen. For a moment his face went completely still in a way that scared me. Then his jaw tightened and he swiped to answer while walking away. Hey Mom, his voice dropped and I caught the warning in it immediately. I hovered in the doorway while he paced the living room. You talked to her, I heard him say, his tone climbing fast. What do you mean she bought it? That is not what I told you. My stomach flipped because now there was no way to pretend this stayed small. He stopped pacing and listened while his mom talked on the other end. I could not hear every word, but I caught phrases like not the first time and leaves her out. His fingers pressed against the bridge of his nose like he had a headache someone handed him. No, it did not go like that, he trailed off, then sighed hard enough for me to hear. He turned his back toward me and lowered his voice. I will handle it here, he muttered, then gave a quick goodbye. The call ended and he stood there for 3 full seconds without moving. Then he spun around and headed for the kitchen with that tight walk I knew too well. What exactly did you tell my mom? He stopped in front of me with his arms folded high on his chest. Not how, not why, just that demand right out of the gate. I realized he was angrier about being exposed than about what he had done. I kept my hands flat on the counter so I would not shake. I told her I picked the necklace and paid for it. I told her you forgot to get her anything and used mine. I left out the part where you lied about planning it for months. His eyebrows shot up like I had confessed to a crime. So you just ran to her the second we had a disagreement. His voice hit that sharp pitch he uses when he wants me to feel childish. You made me look like some manipulative liar to my own mother. You lied, I answered, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. If the story makes you look bad, that is because of what you did. She deserved to know I was the one who picked out her present. I am not going to pretend I am fine disappearing from my own effort. He let out a rough laugh and scraped his hand through his hair. You always do this, something tiny happens and you escalate it. It was one rushed decision on a busy day, not a crime spree. Now my mom is crying and blaming herself for how I turned out. That line knocked the breath out of me for a second. So that is what bothers you most, I asked, her tears. Not that you took from me and lied about it and doubled down. Just that someone finally saw the full picture instead of your edited version. He pointed at me like he was presenting evidence to a crowd. You did not need to drag family into our stuff. We could have discussed it like adults instead of tattling. You took private tension and turned it into a spectacle. I actually laughed at that because it landed so backwards. We did talk, I reminded him in the car, for a long time. I begged you to acknowledge that what you did was wrong. You cared more about convincing me I imagined the whole thing. He opened his mouth, then closed it again when he realized I was not backing down this time. His shoulders dropped slightly and the anger shifted into something cooler. You always need a villain, he muttered, and it is always me. Relationships do not work if one person keeps score for both. That was the moment something in me just clicked. I had spent so long trying not to be the girlfriend who complains. But looking at him, then I saw a man more upset about being caught than about hurting me. And I saw myself standing there making myself small so his world could stay comfortable. I am not trying to keep score, I said, my voice quieter. I am trying to figure out if you even see me as a partner. You used my gift, erased me from it, then mocked me for caring. Now you are furious that I told the truth instead of covering for you again. His expression flickered like he knew that summary was accurate and hated hearing it. This is over a present, he threw back, do you hear yourself? Couples survive affairs and bankruptcy and actual betrayals. You want to blow everything up over a piece of jewelry. That word betrayal stuck to the inside of my skull. If this is not betrayal to you, what would be? Taking from me and lying about it feels pretty damn close. Making me question my own memory just so you can stay the hero does too. He stepped closer like he could force the conversation to shrink. So what, you are done now, you are leaving over this? I heard the disbelief under the anger, like my staying was guaranteed. I think so, I answered, and both of us went quiet. For a second I thought he had not heard me. His hand dropped from the counter and he stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. You are not serious, he finally managed. We can go to counseling or something. We can learn to communicate better, we do not have to throw everything away. That word communicate almost made me scream. This is not a communication problem, I told him very slowly. You understood me perfectly in the car and decided my feelings were inconvenient. You only started negotiating when your mother found out what really happened. He paced once across the kitchen, then back like he could wear down the floor. So what is your plan, he asked, his voice suddenly flat. You walking out into the cold because I messed up a holiday. Good luck finding someone who never makes a mistake. That line hurt because a part of me feared exactly that. What if I was being unreasonable and this was me expecting perfection? What if everyone else would see this as a minor mess and judge me for leaving? Then I remembered how my friends reacted when they read the screenshots. I am not leaving because you are imperfect, I told him. I am leaving because you refuse to own W. How you did? Because you would rather twist the story than sit in discomfort for 1 minute. Because I do not like who I am becoming when I keep excusing that. He stared at me for a long counted breath, then scoffed. So when is this grand exit happening, he asked, tonight. You going to drag your suitcase out while my mom sobs on the phone? You really want to script that scene for us? His sarcasm almost worked, but something in me had finally tipped over. No, I said, I will go after the holidays, maybe next week. I will stay on the couch until I find somewhere temporary. I will not blow this up in front of your family. That small compromise seemed to soothe him a little. Fine, he muttered, if you are still here by then you will calm down anyway. He grabbed his phone and walked away toward the bedroom like the matter was settled. He did not ask what he could do to fix anything, he just assumed I would fold. That assumption is what killed it for me more than the gift. As soon as he closed the door, I pulled my phone from my pocket. I typed a message to Mia with shaking hands. Do you have space for me for a few days? I think I am actually done. Her reply popped up almost instantly, like she had been waiting for this moment. Yes, I do, come whenever you need, I am not even asking questions. My throat tightened because someone was willing to make space for me without negotiation. I stared at that message and realized my deadline had just moved up. The next morning I waited until he left for a quick errand. The moment the door clicked shut, I grabbed a stack of bags from the closet. I moved fast, tossing clothes and chargers and important papers into them. It felt less like packing and more like pulling myself out of a net. Every time I hesitated over something sentimental, I reminded myself why I was leaving. I pictured his mother thanking only him while I stood there burning on the couch. I remembered him calling me dramatic for wanting my name attached to my own gift. Those images worked better than any pep talk I could give myself. Halfway through loading my things by the door, my phone lit up. A new message from his mom appeared on the screen. I know you two are talking right now, she wrote, but I needed to say this to you directly. I believe you about the present, and I am sorry I did not think to ask sooner. Another bubble followed before I could respond. I love my son, but I see how he smooths over reality sometimes. You do not deserve to feel invisible in your own relationship. Whatever you choose next, I am grateful you were honest with me. I sat on the floor among bags and let myself cry hard for the first time all week. It hit me that she was apologizing for things she did not do while he still had not. I typed back with clumsy hands that I appreciated her message more than she knew. I also told her I loved her and that none of this was about choosing sides. Right after I pressed send, another text came in from him. We need to talk when I get back. It read, do not do anything impulsive. I stared at the words and realized he still thought this was a sudden mood swing. He still did not get that my choice had been building for a long time. Instead of answering him, I grabbed my keys and hauled the first bag to my car. My arms ached, but the physical weight felt better than the emotional drag inside the apartment. Trip after trip, I emptied pieces of my life out of that space. By the time I finished, my chest felt raw but lighter in a way I had not expected. As I pulled away, my phone lit up with his name again and again. Calls, messages, one long paragraph about how I was overreacting. He tossed in a quick I love you near the end like a patch. He still never wrote the one sentence I had been waiting for, I lied and I am sorry. I drove to Mia's place with wet cheeks and a weird sense of relief. She opened the door before I even knocked twice and wrapped her arms around me. I thought you might back out, she murmured into my hair, but I am so glad you did not. That was the first time I believed leaving was something to be proud of instead of ashamed. That night I slept on her couch with my bags stacked in a corner. His notifications kept flashing on my screen until I flipped it face down. Some were angry, some were pleading, some were weirdly casual like nothing had happened. None of them mentioned the way he twisted the story in front of his mother. Today his mom texted again to check if I was safe and eating. She told me she was giving him space to think but would not dismiss what I shared. She wrote that sometimes the smallest moments show us who someone really is. That message hurt and comforted me at the same time. So now I am here on a borrowed couch typing this out on my phone. Bags still packed, notifications piling up, my heart bouncing between guilt and relief. Part of me keeps asking if I detonated something that could have been repaired. The rest of me can. As this was never about one holiday gift in a box. It was about someone who could steal my effort, rewrite the story, then expect me to applaud. So I am asking strangers because I need a reality check from outside the blast radius. If your partner did this and still refused to really own it, would you go back? Or is walking away over a stolen Christmas present actually the most reasonable thing I have done all year?